Well, welcome everyone. I am Ashley Polietz. I am the Executive Director of the Louisiana AAP, and we are excited to bring you this event. So this will be the first of 4 webinars in this series throughout the month of June. So today's presentation, Championing Child Safety, the Role of Child Death Review, will be presented. I apologize, I'm trying to manage these things. All right, let's go. So funding for this webinar series has been made possible from a grant from the American Academy of Pediatrics in collaboration with the National Center for Child Fatality Review and Prevention. Just a quick thing to let everyone know, this is being recorded for quality and education purposes. Slides from today's call, as well as the video recording, will be sent to all registrants. We do ask you to keep in mind, because this is being recorded, please be sure not to share any personal health information if you're sharing something about a patient or a client. And we want you to participate. During the presentation, please be sure to mute yourself. We'll be monitoring that. So if anybody comes off and there's background noise, we'll monitor that. But everyone does have the ability to unmute themselves. So we'll have the opportunity to have some live questions and answers. And during that time, if you feel comfortable and want to come onto video, you're welcome to. We know it's lunchtime, so feel free to eat your lunch, do whatever you need to do. We're really glad to have you here. And again, if you haven't done so yet, please put in the chat box who you are and where you're from. That'll help us get to know each other a little bit better. It also will help us count your participation in today's event. So this is accredited for 1 AMA PRA Category 1 CME credit. So disclosures, our presenter, Jada Brown, has no relevant disclosures to make. As you can see on the screen, Louisiana AAP Planning Committee member, Dr. Joseph Bocchini, has made a disclosure, and that's there on the screen. So again, today is Championing Child Safety, the Role of Child Death Review, and will be presented by Jada Brown. So Jada, if you want to unmute yourself and come on video, you should be able to share your screen and introduce yourself, start your presentation.
All righty. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. I'm very excited for this presentation today. My name is Jada Brown. I am the Mortality Surveillance Epidemiologist for our Child Death Review program here in Louisiana. A little bit of background about myself. I got my Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And then following that, I went to LSU Health Science Center and got my Master's in Public Health with an epidemiology concentration. And I've been here at the Louisiana Department of Health for about 2 years now, between internships and part-time work, and now as the Mortality Surveillance Epidemiologist. So it's been great working here and doing this child safety work has definitely been rewarding. And I look forward to telling you guys all about it today. So what we will be talking about is the Child Death Review Program and Child Death Review Team. But before I start, I would just like to say that I have no financial relationships to disclose. And so the learning objectives for our presentation today are to describe Louisiana's Child Death Review, case identification, abstraction, review processes, and legislative protections, to identify state-level challenges, system-level challenges, and opportunities for collaborative improvement related to child death review cases, abstraction, and review, recognize opportunities to engage and current case identification and prevention efforts to reduce child mortality and injury in Louisiana. And then lastly, understand the leading causes of unexpected death for Louisiana's children. So a little bit of background as to what is child death review. Child death review is a process that works to understand how and why children die through a comprehensive and multidisciplinary review of unexpected child deaths at the state and local levels in order to take action to prevent future deaths. Child death review is mandated for unexpected deaths of children under the age of 15. So our main focus for child death review is for children ages 0 to 14. So why is CDR important? Just a little bit of information regarding Louisiana specific data is that Louisiana has higher rates of infant and child mortality than almost all states in the US. In 2017 to 2019, Louisiana ranked 4th in both infant and child mortality across the nation. But CDR is also important so that we can have complete and timely information on child fatalities, which is essential for creating actionable recommendations to prevent future fatalities. And then it also allows us to have complete information for committees to address the prevention efforts at all levels, such as providers, community, and system. A little bit more background about CDR is that it was established in Louisiana in 1992, and it is coordinated by the Louisiana Department of Health, Office of Public Health, Bureau of Family Health, Maternal and Child Health Mortality Surveillance Program, which is what I do. And it is legislatively mandated per Louisiana Revised Statute 40/2019. So a little bit of authority and access information regarding child death review. So as I stated, Louisiana's Revised Statute 40/2019 mandates a standardized child death review investigation protocol. And that protocol must include procedures for law enforcement entities and local departments of social service to follow in response to a child death. Per Louisiana Revised Statute 40/2019, state and regional panels are authorized to access medical records, vital records, and investigation reports from physicians, healthcare providers, hospitals, clinics, child welfare, law enforcement entities, and more. And oftentimes we get questions about confidentiality and the protection of those records once they are received. But it's important to note that all members of the CDR team, as well as those who attend CDR meetings, must sign confidentiality agreements prior to participation. And these confidentiality agreements require that members refrain from discussing case information, case deliberations, or the proceedings of cases from child outside of our child death review meetings, and refrain from naming or blaming individuals, agencies, or providers associated with the cases. And so also the records obtained by our state and local panels are confidential and shall not be available for subpoena, nor shall the information be disclosed, discoverable, or deemed admissible in any evidence in any civil, criminal, administrative, or other tribunal or court for any reason. Documents accessed by CDR panels are protected from public records requests through Louisiana Revised Statute 44.4. So here we have a visual diagram of the CDR process. There are kind of 5 major steps in the process. I'll be focusing on steps 3 through 5 to discuss in further detail. But something important. And that first step is the death. And so wherever that death occurs, whether it's in the home and then police go out and investigate the scene, or whether it's in a hospital, those deaths occur. The processes that are laid out in our CDR protocol will take place, and then cases are identified. And so once they are identified, our local maternal and child health coordinators request the records from coroners, law enforcement agencies, and other entities that the records would be important for our cases. And then comes case prep and abstraction and data entry. And data is entered into the National Fatality and Review Prevention website. And that's also a confidential place. The records are kept for all of our cases. And then step 4 is local and state reviews, where multidisciplinary panels come together, review cases, and come up with actionable recommendations as to move forward in ways to prevent certain deaths in the future. And then lastly is the dissemination step, which can occur in our annual data reports that I will speak about and show a little bit of information about later, but as well as on a local level through our community action and advisory teams. So as I was saying, for that step 3, the case prep and data entry portion, we have 9 maternal and child health coordinators across the state, 1 per region. And once they've received all of the records that they requested regarding a case, they complete data entry into the national case system, which, again, like I stated, is confidential and protected. They also put together a de-identified narrative that combines all relevant information of the case. And then all hard copy records are securely stored either via protected server or locked hard copies are kept, and they will be destroyed after 5 years in accordance with state policy. Next is that case review step. And so, as I stated, there are 9 regional maternal child health coordinators. So there are also 9 local CDR teams, multidisciplinary teams that come together to review cases, and then 1 statewide CDR team. So the teams review those de-identified case summaries that are put together by the regional coordinators, and the teams identify risk and protective factors, and then provide recommendations to help reduce the occurrences of child death in the future. CDR case reviews do not include any identifying information about the individual or families or communities that the decedents were a part of. And the intent of the case reviews is not to judge the investigations or how the case was handled, but to identify opportunities to improve the response in the future. In order to review cases, committees need to have that de-identified information regarding the circumstances that occurred, relevant family information, scene investigation reports, medical records, district attorney records, and many more based on whatever the case needs or the type of case that it is. And then that 5th step of statewide and community action. Earlier, I referred to our, at our CDR meetings, those recommendations go to our community action and advisory teams, also known as CAT teams. There are 11 CAT teams throughout the state, and CAT members determine which recommendations from the CDR need to be addressed at a state level, system level, community level, and or family level. And those members prioritize needs, brainstorm solutions, and work together with outside partners to implement the solutions and recommendations that came from the state and local CDR panels. So the state panel, which is the larger kind of come together group of all of the local panels include health officials, members from the Office of Public Health, legislators, law enforcement officers, coroners, pathologists, statewide agencies, and then six people appointed by the governor. So that includes a health professional with expertise in sudden infant death syndrome, a pediatrician with expertise in diagnosing and treating child abuse and neglect, and then lastly, 4 citizens from the state at large who represent different geographic areas of the state. So if you have any local questions, this is a list of all of the regional maternal and child health coordinators who, as I mentioned, play a vital part in putting together all of these cases, getting the data entered into the fatality and review case system. So if you have any specific questions about your region, you can reach out to your local coordinator. And also, our website is thepartnersforfamilyhealth.org. On this website, you can find any information regarding SUID, child death, infant death, CDR, regional information. Really, this is kind of like a catch-all of anything that you need. It can all be found here. So this is a really important and helpful resource. So now I will go into talking about our annual CDR report. But before I go into the annual report, I would like to give a little bit of background about data cycles and data timing. Oftentimes people wonder why we do reports in 3-year increments, and sometimes why is the information a little bit delayed, or like if we're in 2022, why can't we have 2021 data? And the reason for that is because the way that in order for us to provide the most accurate data, we want to make sure that the death file is at its most complete stage. And so although even after the final, what we consider the final file, there may be slight changes, but for the most part, all the cases have been accounted for. And also another thing to note is that coroners have up to 6 months to register a death. And so sometimes, depending on the type of death, it can be faster than others, or it can be slower than others. And recently, due to COVID and the opioid epidemic, timing for things such as toxicology tests and the completion of coroner investigation reports have been a little delayed. And so because of that, it kind of also delays the timing in which our final death files are completed. So we can, for instance, we can look forward to having a completed 2021 death file within the next few months. And then we can start working on any 2021 data needs, as well as the next annual data report. But some hopeful and exciting news is that we will be publishing the 2018 to 2020 CDR data report in this coming summer. So the information that I will be talking about today is from our 2017 to 2019 CDR data report. And it is also published on our Partners for Family Health website. So you can easily find this information. And it's also helpful to find the information because, as I will speak about later, there are regional profiles at the end of the child death review report. And so if you're interested in region-specific data, that is where you can find that information. So some statistics from 2017 to 2019 data is that on average each year during that time period, we had about 61,000 infants that were born alive. And then also between that time period, we saw that there were 1,968 child deaths, which was about an average of 656 infant and child deaths per year. And then of that number, approximately 462 deaths were from infants that died before their first birthday. And then another 194 children didn't survive to their 15th birthday. And so based on this information, we know that the leading cause of injury-related death among infants is sleep-related deaths that are also classified as sudden unexpected infant deaths. And then for children ages 1 to 14, we saw that motor vehicle crashes, homicides, and drownings were the leading cause of death for that age group. So going a little bit more into infant mortality, from 2017 to 2019, there were an average of 462 infant deaths. And then as we can see, we have like the rates per 1,000 live births. So Louisiana had 7.7 infant deaths per 1,000 live births, whereas the United States rate was 5.6 infant deaths per 1,000 live births. And the Healthy People 2020 goal was 6 infant deaths per live birth, per 1,000 live births. And so, as you will see a little bit later in future slides when I talk about trends, is that Louisiana consistently stays above the US's rate for infant mortality and child mortality. And then in the pie graph that you see at the bottom, it breaks down what all of the infant deaths, why they occur, kind of the circumstances behind it. And more than 40% are due to perinatal period conditions. And that will fall under medical. And then some of the injury related ones, which is what we focus on mostly in our reports, are like injury related deaths would be the SUID, and then injuries unrelated to sleep. So going a little bit more in depth about those injury related deaths, on average there were about 115 per year for the 2017 to 2019 time period. And then the pie graphs to the right of the screen, we see that 79% of infant deaths that occurred were due to SUIDs. Another 5% were due to threats to breathing, homicides, motor vehicle, and other types of death. So these are all just very important to see. But for infant mortality, the major injury-related cause are SUIDs, which SUID means sudden unexpected infant death, just for clarification. So now when looking at trends for infant mortality, overall infant mortality, like I stated, we are above the US rate. Louisiana is above. And then for both infant mortality due to sudden unexpected infant deaths, SUIDs, or due to injury, we also remain above the average of the US. So Louisiana definitely has some work to do, both to even try to get down to what the US rate is and also to meet those Healthy People 2020 goals, which now that we're in 2022 will transition to Healthy People 2030 goals. So a little bit more information about sudden unexpected infant deaths. 70% of sleep-related deaths in Louisiana occur by month 3 of age, and that was during that 2017 to 2019 period. Some risk factors that we saw present in Louisiana due to SUID deaths had to do with parents having some type of drug or alcohol impairment, the children not being sleeping on their backs, co-sleeping, so sleeping with other people, not being in a crib or bassinet, unsafe bedding or toys, also being in the sleep environment with the child. And then other infant sleep environment risk factors that was collected in 2019 from our Louisiana PRAMS data, Pregnancy Risk Associated Monitoring System. That's what PRAMS stands for. We saw some other risk factors included mothers who currently smoke, infants not sleeping on their back, bed sharing, aka co-sleeping, sleeping with soft objects, and non-firm sleep surfaces. So having softer sleep surfaces is also a risk factor for sudden unexpected infant death. So now transitioning out of infant deaths and moving more into child mortality. The child mortality that we look at focuses on the age range of 1 to 14. And we see that half of child deaths are a result of injury, whereas only about 25% of child deaths were 25% of infant deaths were a result of injury. So twice as many child deaths occur due to injury opposed to infant deaths. And then
Question.
Yes.
Okay, so I see the motor vehicle crashes are 29%. Do you know if that was because they were not restrained properly, or is it just a blanket restrained or not restrained properly?
There is a partial part of it is due to restraint, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about that later in regards to specifics regarding motor vehicle crashes, homicides, and drownings.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. So yes, as you can see, the leading causes of death for injury related to deaths in children ages 1 to 14 are motor vehicle crashes, homicides, and drownings, which we'll go into more detail in a bit. And then looking at child mortality trends, again, Louisiana above the U.S. rate. And just to note that child deaths are based on the child population for whatever year we're speaking of. So going into those motor vehicle crashes to answer your questions. We see that 94 infant and children died in Louisiana due to motor vehicle crashes during 2017 to 2019. And we also see that in most cases, children that died due to MVCs were passengers. The passenger information is the green color for the green and purple graphs. And then that is also broken down by age group. So ages 0 to 1, 1 to 4, 5 to 9, and 10 to 14. But then also to kind of look a little bit more deeply at the motor vehicle crashes, safety features that were either used incorrectly or not present during these crashes included child seats, shoulder belts, booster seats, lap belts, and airbags. And so in more than 70% of cases, when the children died, lap belts, booster seats, shoulder belts, and child seats were either used incorrectly or not used properly. So that definitely is a contributing factor in these motor vehicle deaths. And then in almost 50% of cases, airbags were either not used correctly or not present in the child motor vehicle deaths. So a little bit more detail about homicide deaths. but in 2017 to 2019, there were 83 infants and children that were victims of homicides. Infants were more likely to die from blunt force injuries with abrasive head trauma, while children ages 1 to 14 were more likely to die from firearms. And so the graphs below depict both. The first graph at the top represents ages 0 to 1. So we see that 73% of cases where children died due to homicides, it was from blunt force or physical force that was a cause of death. Another 20% was a combination of other, so hanging, smoke inhalation, abandonment, or drug intoxication. And then 7% was due to firearms. And then for homicides ages 1 to 14 in Louisiana, we saw that 51% were due to firearms. Another 38% were due to blunt force and physical force. And then the other 11% were due to sharp objects, asphyxiation, hanging, smoke inhalation, and drug intoxication. Now going into drowning deaths, we see that what we saw in 2017 to 2019, that 53 infant and child deaths occurred due to drowning, and drowning was the third leading cause of death due to injury for children 0 to 14 in Louisiana. Some of the top risk factors for drowning included 96% of children not being able to swim, 72% of situations where there was a lack of supervision, and then 54% were issues due to barriers to the water. And when within our national fatality review system, we look at multiple barriers to the water. And so in any way that a child can be stopped to get to the water, that is what is accounted for in this in these risk factor statistics. And then when focusing on drowning location, we see that over half of the drownings that occurred happened in pools, hot tubs, and spas. Another 18% happened in natural water, 7% in bathtubs, and then 15% in other forms of water. So that is kind of the background on drowning in Louisiana for 17 to 18. And also for these major causes of death, information is fairly similar in our upcoming 2018 to 2020 report, especially surrounding like risk factors and locations. So next we focus on suicide deaths, because suicide is one of the leading causes of death for the child population of 10 to 14. And so in 2017 to 2019, we saw that 26 children died from suicide, and more than 1/3 of the suicides were completed by firearms. And so just a little side plug for another one of the series that is happening in 2 weeks will be information regarding our Be Smart campaign, which is a firearm secure storage campaign. And that was birthed as a response to seeing this data. So definitely taking that child death review data to action portion very seriously, and working to figure out ways that we can try to reduce these statistics. So in addition to firearms, we saw another 54% of suicides that were committed by hanging, and then another 11% that occurred due to overdose. And then children who committed suicide, we also see that they had experiences with mental illness, either on medication, receiving some type of mental health services, having communicated previous thoughts of suicide, so having some type of suicidal ideation or having attempted suicide previously, family discord within the home, breaking up with a significant other. So these are kind of some of the things that we have seen through those circumstances that the children who experienced suicide were experiencing. So to discuss a little more, kind of going into the racial disparity side of things in Louisiana from 2017 to 2019, we saw that Black infants were 2.2 times as likely to die as white infants. And then the specific rates are 11.8 Black infants died per 1,000 live births, and 5.3 white infants died per 1,000 live births. And then the chart that you see at the bottom shows what that relative risk comparison for racial disparities is among regions. So all 9 Louisiana regions are included below. And then also we have Louisiana, which falls pretty much in the middle among all the other regions. Now looking at racial disparities from the age groups of 1 to 14, we see that Black children were 1.6 times as likely to die as white children. The specific rates for Black children and white children. Black children, we saw 30.9 deaths per 100,000 children. And then for white children, we saw 18.9 deaths per 100,000 children. And then also looking at those racial disparities based on cause of death. So we included those top causes of death of motor vehicle crashes, homicide, drowning, and suicide. Black children are represented by the blue, and white children are represented by the green in this chart, bar graph below. So as I spoke about earlier, at the end of this annual report that includes much more information than that I just covered quickly, are regional data briefs that break down this information by region. So it has top causes of death for infant death, child mortality, the breakdown of those top leading causes of death, and just more information on a regional level. And so if you're interested in knowing specifically what's going on in your region, you can look at those, and they are included in the appendix of the larger annual child death review report. But then also we have like the general overall state data that is included in the body of the report. So with that, I would just like to thank the Louisiana AAP for allowing me to present and provide everyone a little bit more information about Child Death Review, what we do, and who we are, and then the type of things that we produce, as well as the National Center for Fatality and Review, where our data is housed and collected, the Maternal and Infant Health Branch Division of the CDC, our state CDR team, and the maternal and child health coordinators, who definitely are a huge and vital part to making all of this happen. So thank you all so much. If there are any questions, please feel free to unmute, or I kind of saw out of my peripheral that the chat was kind of lighting up. So I'm gonna look and see if there were any major questions, but if you did put a question in the chat, please feel free to unmute and ask your question now.
Will you be sharing slides? Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Or do we access the CDR report online in the PDF? Then we can, is that where most of these statistics come from?
Yes. So all the information, all the data information included in today's presentation is on the 2017 to 2019 annual CDR report that is located on the Partners for Family Health website.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, Jada, so everyone, this is Jane Herway, and I work closely with Jada at the Bureau of Family Health on child death review. So thank you, Jada. And that was a great presentation. And just to remind everyone again that because we've been working on the 2020 final data set, the 2018-2020 report will be out soon. And so maybe Ashley, what we can do is and of course it'll be on our website when it's published, but maybe Ashley too, if you have, you can push it out to your members as well, since many are on the call. And so those of you who aren't AAP members, I know you're probably connected to our community advisory and action teams and our regional maternal and child health coordinators. And so we'll make sure you get the most current report when it comes out. And then shortly after that report's published, we'll get the 2021 final data, and then Jada will go about creating the next report for 2019 to 2021. And you guys, this is just a snippet from the actual report. Jada went through some of the highlights. So I encourage you to grab a copy of it from the website because it is very comprehensive. And that list of who to contact in your region is in there. So it's also probably a little bit bigger than it was on the slide, if you would like to see that. So yes, please go and pull it up. And we are so encouraged by the participation today. And one of the things that we would love it, if any of you are not involved on a local child death review panel, or the state panel, it's mandated who is on it. And so we would have to get confirmation for any new people from the Senate. Right now, most of the positions are filled, but your local panel, if you're interested, we encourage you to become engaged in that process, because we need healthcare providers and their expertise in all of our review processes. And then Dr. Kavanaugh, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but maybe introduce you as the chair of the Louisiana State Child Death Review Panel. I didn't know if you wanted to come off video mute and just say hi or anything.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, I cannot come onto video because I'm sort of multitasking and I'm actually driving, listening in. But I just want to thank everybody so much for coming today. Very encouraging, and definitely hope that people reach out to their local panel. I know we just had our local one yesterday. So just happy that everybody is here today and learning.
Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. And then, Ashley, I didn't know if you wanted to go through some questions. I see a question pop up in the chat if you were going to go through those.
Yeah, so that's there is a question in the chat, Joyce Michael. So if you, I'll read what you have here, but if you wanted to explain more, feel free. So the question is, what feedback do you get from parents? So it said, since this is parents. So I don't know if you guys have the answer for that, or if Joyce, if you want to.
Since it's mandated, do you get any pushback or any feedback or any conflict with parents, considering that they're in a time when they're dealing with such a loss and y'all are telling them they have to go through this? I mean, what kind of feedback or pushback do you get from the parents?
So as far as parents, when we do our records request and get all the information in order to kind of come up with the summary of cases, a lot of times our coordinators do not have to speak directly to parents. All the information is in the case files. So kind of that first point of contact when the death occurs, whether it's the police officer or it's at the hospital, the notes and information that those people take is what we receive. And that's kind of how we understand what's happening with the parents. But then also sometimes in the CATS community action and advisory teams that happen locally, parents and families will be involved in those local levels. And so they help to get the recommendations into action within their communities. So that's kind of the involvement or the extent of involvement to parents. But as far as speaking to them kind of during that very difficult time, we don't do that.
I'll also just add there that many of our coroner's offices across the state have resources for parents, because obviously it is a very traumatic time for them. So some of the offices have victim advocates or other community resources that they're linked to help support them during that time. And actually, I've even had feedback at the local level that some of them almost like to know that this is looked at in this type of way, because it gives them a sense that that death, if it could contribute to saving other children in the future and nobody else ever has to go through that again, they actually sometimes like to find, some sort of meaning or purpose that can be, discovered from it. So anyways, I found that sometimes they actually want to be involved.
Great, thank you both so very much. And Joyce, thank you for your question. Jada, that's all the questions I see in the chat. So I will, I'll share the last bit as we wrap up. So thank you to everyone for being on today and for your participation. Jada, thank you and the CDR team for all of this fantastic information. As I shared earlier, we will be sharing the slide deck and a recording of today. So you'll get that as a registrant. So our next session will be next week, June 14th. We'll be talking about ACEs and resilient communities. So I hope that you can join us. It'll be the same Zoom room, same time. You do need to complete your evaluation summary in order to receive your education credit. So that's all the presentation stuff we have today. So take a few minutes, get your eval done. It's short, it's not long. We appreciate the feedback. That'll also be given to the speaker so that they can understand and know what information was helpful, what other information folks would like to hear. So that closes us for the day. I hope everyone has a great rest of the week and a good weekend.